Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only Mission Impossible podcast that's getting you through these cold winter months with warm, summery laughter. Unless you're listening to this below the equator, then it's summertime and we're bringing you cool ocean breezes. You know what I mean, Charles?
Yeah, totally.
I can't assume where people are listening to this, you know.
It's true.
So kind of trying to cast a wide net. But how you doing, Charles?
I'm great. I am doing just great. And yourself?
Good. I'm excited about this episode. A little different type of episode this week.
Yeah. How long have you known these guys?
I have known Eric and Scott for many, many moons. When we first got on the call, I think the last time I saw Scott was last year at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, where everyone was trying to get home because there was a blizzard coming into Chicago, and it was also the first night of Game of Thrones. So it was a lot of tension was in the air, Charles, if people were going to get back in time to watch Game of Thrones. So yeah, that was the last time I saw him. But two great guys from Austin who I've known for a long time, and now they have a podcast dedicated to Stephen King, and we thought let's do a little kind of mashup, a little crossover episode.
Yeah, it felt like we found a connection there in Brian De Palma, in that Brian De Palma directed the first Stephen King adaptation in Carrie, and then he did the first Mission Impossible movie. So it felt like in a weird way, kind of De Palma had kicked off both of our shows in a way.
Yes. And these guys are really funny and smart. And I think this episode is a little long too. So do you have anything to go over before we jump in?
Not really, other than just, we mention it, but I don't know if we clarify that the Rebecca Ferguson connection between the two as well, which I don't know if we ever really talked that much about with them, but Rebecca Ferguson obviously is Ilsa in Mission Impossible, and then she was in Dr. Sleep. She is wonderful in Dr. Sleep. If you have not seen that movie, you should, because her performance is the best part of the movie.
Yes, she is very different than Elsa. She is
Yes.
very bad.
And
she is,
amazing.
Yeah,
she's just amazing in it.
Yeah,
and I took kind of a step back this week because I know you knew these guys. Obviously, you've known these guys for a while, and you also, as I've known you forever, you have always been the biggest Stephen King fan that I know. So it was great to have you sort of talk with them and lead this conversation. I have not really read much Stephen King, so I had to kind of just take a step back and enjoy the chat, just like our listeners.
Oh God, that's making me scared to listen to this now. But these two are a lot of fun, and you should definitely check out their podcast called the Kingcast, which is now part of the Fangoria podcast network. When Scott announced that on Twitter, I said, do they need a Mission Impossible podcast too? Turns out they don't. I just I gotta do my favorite part of the show, Charles. If you'll allow me.
Let's hear it.
I just want to tell everybody that this episode is brought to you by My Favorite Album, where filmmaker and music journalist Jeremy Dillon talks to guests like Fred Armisen, Bob Odenkirk, and Casey Musgraves about the music and sometimes the films that they love and how it's influenced them. And if you've listened to our Bond episode from a couple weeks ago, that was from this show, and you can listen to that there or on our podcast, the main feed. But you should definitely check out My Favorite Album because it's really great. I keep waiting for him to ask us on individually to talk about our favorite album.
Oh, I would love that.
He hasn't done it. What would you do? Octune Baby?
I probably would do Octung Baby by U2. Yeah. What about you? Would you do Paul's Boutique by Beastie Boys?
Maybe Paul's Boutique or Random Access Memories.
Oh, yeah. I was just listening to that album recently. It's so incredible.
Yeah, or Since I Left You, maybe. The Avalanches record.
Oh, that album, too.
So we're ready, Jeremy, is what I'm trying to tell you. We'll do it on the Patreon.
If you have any interest, Jeremy, we're still here.
We're not going anywhere. And this episode is also brought to you by John B. And also Real Estate Interest LLC, which is commercial real estate advice for growing companies. And what they want to impart is that companies know that they can consult with them even if they're not looking to buy or sell. They can help companies save and strategize too. So definitely check them out. And obviously we'll be back after the show to plug our Patreon and a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, we are so excited to have a couple of real characters on the show today. I think I can say that, without question.
How dare you? I'm leaving.
Eric Vespy and Scott Wampler, who record this amazing new podcast. It's still new, right? You would say?
Yeah,
It's newish. It's got that new podcast smell still.
Debuted in April.
Yeah. Called the Kingcast, which is an amazing show about Stephen King, both the literary and cinematic adaptations. And we are so excited to have you guys on to talk a little bit about De Palma and sort of his legacy.
We're excited too. When you approached me about this, I think we like y'all's show and y'all like our show. And we don't really have a good excuse to be talking to each other right now. But Brian De Palma is the connective tissue, so we will exploit that for all it's worth just to provide this content for people listening today.
Yeah, I thought it was good enough. I mean, we could have also talked about Rebecca Ferguson.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But, that's a little bit more of a stretch. So you guys have kind of talked about your like top tier Stephen King adaptations, and where does Carrie kind of fit in that?
Well, it's probably the most important King adaptation. Whether or not it's my favorite, it's definitely not in my top. It might be in my top 5. It's definitely not in my top like 2 or 3. But without question, without Carrie, Stephen King doesn't exist as we know him.
Right.
His book was selling okay. It's I think it sold something like 15,000 copies or something before the movie, and then when the movie came out, the paperback of Carrie came out, and it sold millions of copies. So people were, I don't know, King himself has said without Brian De Palma doing Carrie the way he did, then he wouldn't have had the immediate success that he had.
Right.
So without question, it's the most important King adaptation.
Right.
Because without Carrie, maybe we don't get The Shining, we don't get Stand By Me, we don't get The Shawshank Redemption.
Right. And Scott, was it a favorite of yours?
It's not, I'm kind of hedging here, like Eric did. It's undeniably important. It's brilliantly made. I think it's one of the best, but it's not necessarily one of my favorites, if that makes sense. Like I don't think it would, I would have to sit and look at a list of everything and do the math, but I'm guessing it doesn't hit my top 5 in terms of favorites, but it's in the top 3 in terms of best overall adaptations. I differentiate between best and favorite. Those are 2 different things for me. Right.
And I know you guys have talked a lot about, this. One of the things that it did was sort of disregard the structure of the book and the kind of like, if they had done the book, I feel like it would almost be a found footage movie or something, just cobbling together all these kind of disparate points of view. But De Palma really did make a movie with a point of view, which is amazing. And I think you can see that in some of his later, because that was a big breakthrough movie for him too, right?
Right.
And you can even see some of the same like angles and sort of shot choices from Carrie in Mission Impossible, which is kind of amazing too. Mm-hmm. What is your relationship with the Mission Impossible movies? I mean, are you a sort of blanket De Palma fan?
I am a blanket De Palma fan. There's a few of them that I'm not crazy about, and I think that his more recent output has been not excellent, but he's made, so many just absolute bangers that he's sort of at a point now where he could literally film himself taking a shit and release that every year as a movie. And I'd still be like, yeah, but it's Brian De Palma. You know what I mean? Like he's earned his right.
There'd be some beautiful split diopter shots in that bathroom.
Yeah. He's a master. He's incredible. And I love the inherent horniness of Brian De Palma. I love the weirdness of him. What was really interesting for me, just while we're on the topic of De Palma, we revisited this a couple of months ago. We had Karin Kusama on the show, and so I sat down and watched Carrie again for the first time in many years. Like, it's one of those adaptations that I've sort of taken for granted at this point. And my memory of it was completely different than the reality. My memory of it was that it was almost a workman-like job that De Palma had put into it. And that it didn't really carry any of his hallmarks, the split diopter shots, the long tracking shots, all the stuff that makes De Palma so fun. I didn't really remember any of that from when I had seen Carrie previously. And I'm assuming that that's because I hadn't watched Carrie since I was, in my late teens or early 20s, and just didn't have the film vocabulary that I have now. And it blew me away. Like it moved up in my estimation in terms of being a favorite, and it delivered in terms of being a De Palma movie,
right,
in a way that I didn't recall, and that was a really cool thing to rediscover.
Right. You brought up his weird sexuality, and that Charles and I often talk about how that's the one thing missing from Mission Impossible to make it a really De Palma-y movie, is that there isn't any weird sex in it.
I don't think there's no weird sex in it, but I do think it is kind of horny. And I think it's hornier than most of the other Mission Impossible movies, most of which are sexless. Yes. And I love the Mission Impossible movies, but I'm not going to see I'm not going to see Mission Impossible Fallout expecting to get horned up during the movie. It's just not happening.
What movies do you expect to get horned up in?
Not many anymore. Cats was incredibly horny. I didn't get horny during Cats, but I'll tell you, about a year before Cats came out, I used to have a podcast called Trying Times that I hosted with a friend of mine by the name of Katie Schultz, and she and I would go out and do really stupid things on purpose and then talk about them. And we went and saw Cats, like the live production of Cats. And that is among the horniest things I've ever seen with my own two eyeballs. It was just, and that was like kind of a turn on in person. It's like, there's these dancers with their lithe bodies, and they're like gyrating on stage, and like, you're kind of confused because you don't want to fuck a cat, but also like that cat's pretty hot. And, there were a lot of conflicting ideas going on in my head. I got none of that watching the movie, but I do think that Cats as a property is in general pretty horny.
Right. So had you seen Carrie before you had seen Mission Impossible? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I saw the first Mission Impossible when it came out. I saw it in theaters. So that was 96?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I was 15. I was right in that target demo for Mission Impossible. Although I never grew up with the series. I know that was a big thing for my parents, but I grew up on a lot of old TV thanks to Nick at Night. So I watched a lot of Green Acres and Mr. Ed and Bewitched. I watched all sorts of old sitcoms and things. But like for whatever reason, the Mission Impossible series, the television series, never really was a thing for me. So I know that, a lot of the diehard fans were really pissed off that Phelps was the bad guy in it. But like for me, I was just like, well, of course he's the bad guy. It's John Voight,
right.
is that guy. But talk about being weird and sexy. Like John Voight's got like his 20-year-old wife or whatever, right. that's super horny for Ethan Hunt the whole movie.
That's true.
I think that there's definitely more sleaze in that first Mission Impossible, more pulpy sleaze than there is later in the in the series, with the possible exception of that one shot of Rebecca Ferguson, at the play or whatever, where she has the sniper rifle and she has her leg up, and it's like the sexiest shot that's been in cinemas in forever. That
is true. It's a very horny moment.
I feel like we're underestimating John Woo here in MI2 and how horny that movie is, because that movie's got a lot of homoerotic energy. It's got a lot of sexual. There's a lot of leering and brooding, and it's all very sensual. I don't know. I don't want to underestimate John Woo here.
Yeah.
Definitely for people who are turned on by motorcycles, that one's definitely the one for you.
Yeah.
I think I've only seen the second one a couple of times.
I saw it once. I hated it. Like, I hated it upon first viewing. and I love John Woo.
Yeah, my memory of it is not liking it. And I've been sort of nervous to go back and see it again, because it seemed to have look, everyone I knew did not like Mission Impossible 2 when it came out. And now what I see is a lot of people championing it. And so I feel like, from my perspective, it's had a bit of a reevaluation. I remember disliking it so strongly that I kind of don't want to go back and revisit it and watch it if it's shitty, but I am kind of curious. And I love all the other Mission Impossible movies so much that I'm kind of talking myself into it as we're talking about this. But
I think it's time.
Yeah,
it's time.
It is. I'm overdue.
I'm in a fairly geeky text conversation with a bunch of friends, and after rewatching Mission Impossible for this podcast, I was texting them some stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But it's fascinating watching the first Mission Impossible, much like it's fascinating watching the first Fast and the Furious, because the series has evolved well past this first one. That's kind of what I was talking about. And somebody in that text conversation sent me the beach fight scene for Mission Impossible 2. And that's the first time I've watched it since it came out. And it is, just by comparison, not even considering the crazy stunts from the later movies or whatever, but just by coming off of the Brian De Palma film, was so stagey and like unreal and like almost alien. Like it's like more of a generic action thing that could have been Jean-Claude Van Damme. It didn't have to be Ethan Hunt. And and there's a groundedness to that character which like only became more grounded as the stunts got bigger in a weird way, because Tom Cruise has been the forefront of all that, doing that for real. So in a super bizarre way, him, jumping from space almost, down into like a 5-minute free fall. And what was it? The last one, the Henry Cavill one. Yeah. And that is more realistic than whatever that staged bizarre beach fight was, where they just kept throwing each other down on the sand and, playing with a knife or whatever the fuck they were doing in that.
Well, when you saw Mission Impossible when you were 15, did you sort of make the connection that, the same guy that made Carrie made this movie?
Definitely not.
Yeah, at 15, I might have. I was, that was right. Like, I started writing for Ain't It Cool News when I was 16, and I was pretty dumb then, so maybe not. But, but I was definitely in a headspace where I was more aware of what was going on behind the camera than typical. I can almost guarantee you that the first thing that I thought about more was like, this is a Tom Cruise action movie. Right. And that's how I went into it. If I didn't know pretty much immediately after, it would have been fairly shortly after I would have like looked into the director and gone, it's the Carrie guy.
Right. Well, Carrie has a number of De Palma hallmarks that Mission Impossible does not, including the split screen, which where do you guys net out on the split screen controversy?
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I'm into it. I'm way into it.
As much as I love Carrie, like Blowout's my favorite De Palma by a country mile. Like, and he, that is, Blowout is De Palma, like the essence of De Palma or whatever. It's extract. It's De Palma extract. Right. It's like everything I love about Brian De Palma is working 100% at 100% potency in that movie, including the split screen, including those, like I mentioned earlier, the split diopter shots, which is, if people listening to this don't know, it was a special lens they would put on the camera. And you see it all the time in 70s and early 80s movies where something in the extreme foreground is in focus and something in the extreme background is in focus. Right. And there's usually a blurry line somewhere in the middle that they try to hide because it's essentially like two lenses, merged into one. It's like the bifocals of camera lenses, but it's a very distinct look. Spielberg used it a lot. So, J.J. Abrams is part of his style is kind of that thing. I love seeing split diopters. I know a lot of people are very purist when it comes to cinema. It's probably the people you're talking about who are on the side of screw split screen and all that stuff because they view it as a distraction. But to me, that's cinema's visual. Like, anything that gives a little visual variety is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. What? Like, who's complaining about this?
Well, we had Paul Hirsch on the show a couple of times, and what did he say, Charles? That they had to extract some of the split screen, or? Well,
yeah. I think De Palma was shooting it with the edit in mind, and it gave them very little freedom to fix what was, I guess, a sequence that was having problems. And he had to do some magic to make it work, because he was talking about how doing split screen actually it's sort of the enemy of suspense. These are not his words, so I'm butchering it. But he was just talking about how you have to be able to cut back and forth, and when you're having to show everything at the same time, it's difficult to create the suspense. I guess I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along those lines.
I can imagine how it could create an editing problem, but man, I wildly disagree with that overall. Like, I think you can definitely build suspense with a split screen.
Yeah. Well, Paul Hirsch also said we were crazy for loving Blowout, so.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. take that into account. Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I don't know.
Blowout is incredible. That's my favorite De Palma too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
I love showing Blowout to people. That ending, like nobody sees that ending coming.
No.
And it's such a great little cherry on top, that final shot of it. It's a good scream. It's a good scream.
Well, I want to know more about this text chain that's going on about Mission Impossible. Please bring in some of these thoughts.
All right, so going back and looking at it, like I was saying, like the Fast and the Furious movies, the very first Fast and Furious is just kind of like a blatant cash grab to, trying to placate some weird street race culture,
Right.
It's trying to be, just adapt Point Break into, muscle cars. Yeah, and so I went into this viewing of Mission Impossible going, okay, it's going to be like that. I remember it's not going to be as big or whatever. And I clocked pretty early on that the biggest action scene in the first act of the movie is Tom Cruise running away from a burst aquarium. and not, if you said that now, you'd assume, oh, it's like the Monterey Bay Aquarium and there's like whales and shit.
Right.
It's like, no, it's just like a restaurant fish tank blows up. And
It's a drug dealer size aquarium.
Right.
right. And it's shot like as this giant moment, and it's really cool, and it like instantly took me back to being 15 watching it, because he uses slow motion and it's like this big thing, but then there's this weird shot of Tom Cruise running away and the water's just kind of like lapping at his feet. It's like this big crazy slow motion explosion, and there's water everywhere, and then there's like this reverse shot of him running away from the restaurant, and there's just like a little trickle of water behind him. And I'm just like, okay, there's that. But the thing that got me the most, and unfortunately this happens with any movie, especially movies that were made in the 90s that heavily rely on technology, and that's the scene where he's figuring out Job 314,
Right.
Where it's Job 314, and he uses he must have shot this in 95, so he uses the 1995 version of the internet, and the very first thing he's trying to find a weapons dealer, an arms dealer named Max, and so his very first instinct is he goes and types in max.com. and doesn't get a hit, weirdly enough, and so I was just like, that is so bonkers in this day and age. If you're looking for somebody, you just go, I wonder if they just have if they own max.com. Somebody named Max. That's my first instinct as a special agent.
Yeah, pretty much any URL you can think of exists.
Right.
Fistfuckchickennuggets.pokemon.com exists for sure.
If it doesn't, we're gonna own it by the end of this conversation.
Yeah,
But I will say that I give the first one credit for having the action be so tactile. I mean, it says something that the goofy part is him like trying to send an email, but the actual kind of mission and getting the disc and all that seems still pretty relevant because it is so physical.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would say that there's only... The only thing that really doesn't hold up, I mean, there's a few things that don't hold up. The mask tech minus the John Voight mask reveal at the end, which they use computer graphics to blend. Like, the mask tech and everything previous to that is just some pretty horrendous old age makeup, that they put on him. So that, that doesn't hold up as well. And also the final battle on top of the train is so obviously green screened, and it's so jarring because it looked great at the time, and it's not out of place at the time, but just putting it in context now, we've already seen pictures from the new Fallout where they're on top of a speeding train filming, and now they would do that for real, and for whatever reason, just because they've made that part of the identity of the series or these real stunts, just seeing the obvious green screen there is a little jarring going back now. The action's still cool, but I still like the movie. I mean, I know that it sounds like all I'm doing is shitting on it. There's definitely some of my favorite stuff in the Mission Impossibles are the planning the heist and executing the heist kind of things, the job, the gig. And there's no question that the stealing the knock list is like one of the key Mission Impossible scenes. It's probably the first thing you ask any random person at the mall, do a survey at the mall, and what's a Mission Impossible moment, they'll say Tom Cruise hanging in that white room. That's just such an iconic moment.
And Scott, what has your relationship been like to the first movie and the franchise?
I love the first one.
Okay.
Again, the only one I don't really like is 2, and that's just my memory of it. I'll go revisit and we'll find out what happens. But I love the first one. I think it's a mystery worthy of De Palma to be putting on screen. I think Cruise is firing on all cylinders, and I love the set pieces of it. I don't really have any complaints about this movie. And one thing I do love about it, and what stuck out to me when I saw it, when I was a kid for the first time, was that, Cruise's whole team getting fucking wiped out right in the beginning of it is awesome. Like, it does that thing that sort of that executive decision sort of does, where they bring Steven Seagal in and then just kill him immediately. Right. It's sort of like that with Emilio Estevez, only he's getting pile drived in the face by whatever that thing is in the elevator. Right. And that shocked the hell out of me. I was like, I really expected Emilio to make it all the way through. This man was in Mighty Ducks, for God's sakes. And no, he's out. He's done. Like, and now Tom Cruise has to go on the run. I don't have any complaints about it. I love that movie unconditionally.
Right. You know what's interesting that they do in the first one that it's a choice they wouldn't make today, is when Ethan Hunt figures out that Jon Voight is the orchestrator of all this, the moment he does, we know it. Yeah. Where it feels like in a new Mission Impossible, it would be a big twist at the end that, like, holy shit, oh my God, he's actually the bad guy. But De Palma actually lets us know that Ethan knows. Like, he actually shows whenever Jon Voight's lying to him, we're seeing flashes inside Ethan's mind as he's piecing together, and picturing him doing it. And he even does a fake, not really a fake out, because he gets it right, but like he would need an accomplice. So he pictures the wife, Jon Voight's wife, blowing up, the car, and he goes, but he doesn't want to believe it. So then he goes like, no, he could possibly have done that himself. And then you see a different version of that happening, which, that's, it's kind of refreshing to see that these days, where there's, it's more about you being with the protagonist versus you getting a big whoopsie doodle, that it was really Simon Pegg in that makeup, it wasn't him that whole time, that kind of thing,
Well, we think that is the scene too that labeled the movie too complicated. I don't know if you remember this, but when the movie came out, everyone was saying that it was so confusing.
Really?
Yeah. Every review, every write-up from the time, and we think it's because of that scene.
Which is funny too, because I feel like when you watch all the movies now, we've watched all of them so much now for our podcast, obviously, and the first movie I think actually makes the most sense of any of them. All the other ones have weird plot holes and problems, and they're complicated. Like, if you actually watch the first one now, you're like, this one totally makes sense through and through, and all the other ones are way more complicated.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had a problem. Even as a kid, I don't remember having a problem with Mission Impossible.
Yeah, Paul Hirsch says that his theory is that since Twister had just come out, which he says is the stupidest movie ever made, people were
close to it. Yeah.
People were so dumb that this movie felt like, doing calculus or something by comparison.
Well, it sounds flippant, but people are dumb as fuck. Yes. I mean, the average movie-going audience is not that intelligent. And this has been proven to us time and time again. How
many times have you gone to a mall theater and heard the person behind you go, "Who's that? What's
going on? I don't understand."
Yeah, all the time.
Calm down. Yeah, I think that there's probably some of that, and that's probably it entirely. It's just people are stupid.
Yeah,
I will say that there is a little muddiness when it comes to Jon Voight's motivations through all this, and how he does. I get that he fakes his death, but I think that it does get a little more complicated whenever you introduce Kittredge and the fact that the knock list, was a fake and all that, and you realize that he did all this, for something that ended up not being real,
right,
for him, and and I really like that aspect where the big villain main plot kind of fails at the beginning, because his overarching goal isn't to have Ethan Hunt go steal the knock list for him, right? That wasn't why he set all this in motion,
right?
He thought he was getting it at the beginning of the movie when he was killing his squad,
right.
Yeah, but once you realize that, then it becomes fairly obvious. But I think too many people nowadays, especially now, like it surprised me back then, but especially now, they expect everything to be planned to the nth degree from the very beginning by everybody on screen. And if it isn't, then they call it a plot hole.
Right. Yeah, I cannot even imagine how this movie would be taken apart on Twitter and honest trailers and all this other bullshit. Are you guys excited about Kittredge coming back?
What? Kittredge is coming back?
Yeah, he's coming back in 7 and 8.
Fucking hell. I love Kittredge. I love that dude. No, I'm seriously, that's very exciting to me. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's coming back. I mean, McQuarrie jokes that all the middle management bosses throughout the franchise are still working for the IMF. So, Fishburne's still there, all those people are still there. But
Alec Baldwin, sadly not anymore.
Sadly not.
It really is the most reliable. I think the Mission Impossible series is the most reliable franchise in Hollywood.
Right?
Yeah.
Fast and Furious, I'll go see those when they come out, but I do not have the affinity for those movies that a lot of my colleagues do. I know people. I'm good friends with people who are fanatical about those movies. I think they're kind of dumb, it's like eating a bunch of candy. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't have that. I have no emotional connection to them, and I'm not excited to see a new Fast and Furious in the same way that I'm excited to see a new Mission Impossible.
Right. Well, you're going out for a meal versus a fast food.
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect way of putting it.
Well, and here's the thing is, I don't mind that people love goofy stuff. It gets under my skin when you have these normally very hoity-toity critics and stuff go, screaming for justice for Han and all this stuff, and then making
who gives a fuck about Han?
Then they'll make fun of other movies for being goofy or intentionally goofy,
right?
And it's just motherfucker, you ride hard for the movie where they kill people off and bring them back with amnesia. Fast and the Furious is a soap opera.
Yes.
And, and that's totally cool to like, but you can't be super into this and then judge other people for liking the trash that they like.
Right.
You kind of have to turn in that card if you're going to be a huge Fast and the Furious fan. You can't be judgmental after that.
Well, I have some very important questions to ask you that we ask everybody, but I first wanted to know, was there another Stephen King story that you think that De Palma would have been perfect for in terms of adaptation?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
Well, I mean,
The Shining, for one.
Yeah, The Shining is such a visionary film, right? Whether you like it as an adaptation or not, there can be a lot of argument, but you can't argue with the craft. And I think De Palma would have brought a lot to that, especially in that era.
They're gonna remake The Shining at some point. We are, I'm certain of this, that there's no way that even with what happened with Dr. Sleep, where it was not a hit. And they ate some money on that, and they tried to, they pushed the Shining angle really hard in the marketing for that in order to get people in, and it didn't work. I think people rejected out of hand the idea of a Shining sequel, which is what I did when the book came out. I didn't like the book, and I didn't want that, and then I fell in love with the movie. But I do think that Warner Brothers eventually is going to remake The Shining. They're still holding on to those rights as far as I know, right. And I think that we're going to see, within the next 10 years, maybe, I think, a big name director like De Palma will probably be out of the game by the time this happens, but I could see Christopher Nolan doing it. I could see, someone of that caliber where it would turn it into an event thing and also sort of smooth over any misgivings anyone might have about someone remake. They would look at it as remaking Kubrick. So you would need someone of a Paul Thomas Anderson or a Christopher Nolan or Tarantino would never do it, but someone of that caliber, right. behind it. It will fucking happen, though. There's no way they're not going to do it.
I think De Palma, he's so well known for elevating pulpy material while embracing pulp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I feel like he'd be a good fit for a Bachman story, one of Stephen King's pseudonym stories, because those are all very pulpy. I could see him making a great Running Man that's not, especially in the 80s, if it was 80s De Palma doing it, doing the Running Man, which the story tonally has nothing to do with the movie. You know, the movie's a Schwarzenegger goofball fest, which is super fun, but the original story is very dour and ends with the main character flying a plane into a building, into the World Trade Center, right? Or is it just the...
No, it's like the networks.
It's the
tower,
networks building.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, but yeah, a building in New York. So he
could have done Gerald's Game too. You know,
Yeah.
Flanagan. That's another one. Flanagan killed that.
That's a very horny movie. That's a femme fatale era.
Yeah, he could do Rose Madder, which would be kind of fun.
Good Lord.
Yeah, I wonder if he was ever brought any other properties. You guys have to get Romanek on and talk about his Overlook Hotel.
I'd love to.
Project.
Have you read
Oh my
that script?
No, is it amazing?
So awesome.
It's incredible.
It's great.
And in fact, I think at some point we're going to have Glenn Mazzara back on the show to talk about that, because he wrote that one. And when I got a copy of that script, I was like, you know, I went into it with the attitude of like, let's just see about this. And within like 5 pages, it had me. It's one of the better scripts I've read, you know, better unmade scripts.
Right.
And with Romanek directing that particular script, I think you would have ended up with something that would have been a classic. It's great. It's legitimately great.
I think you're gonna have to share that with the group after this call. But
if I still have, I think I had a copy of that like 2 or 3 computers ago, but I'll go
take a look. All right, so now we're down to the very important questions, which is first off, we got to talk about Tom Cruise's hairstyles. I want to know where you fall on that. If you want to rank, you know, best to worst or your top 3 or whatever. I'm just very curious as to where you fall. Short Tom Cruise, hair long. Where are you on that?
I know I'm not a fan of 2. I know I'm not a fan of the borderline mullet.
But you like Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, I like Ghost Protocol, but I don't know. I don't remember him looking the same in 2 as Ghost Protocol.
Protocol is a little bit more shaped. It's a little bit more layered, a little feathery. Yeah.
Ghost Protocol is my favorite, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's my next question. So.
Oh, well, I'm getting ahead of things.
You are.
Eric, you do the hairstyle question.
I definitely prefer shorter, because when I see the longer Tom Cruise hair, I automatically see Frank T.J. Mackey. So I can't from Magnolia. I can't
Nothing
see.
wrong with that.
I don't see Ethan.
The IMF.
Right. It is tame the knock list. It is so like for Ethan Hunt for sure, I prefer the shorter hair. And I know it's kind of more boring now, but I like the more recent looks, you know, where I don't quite like the buzz cut thing he has going on in the first movie as much as, you know, just kind of the average guy, you know, because you have long hair, you're putting on masks and shit all the time. That's not going to work. You're going to have to like get bobby pins and, you know, get your hair tied up. And
that is interesting, because there are a lot of masks in 2, and that's him with his longest hair. Wow, we haven't really thought about this.
Horseshit is what we're saying. This whole thing's horseshit.
I'm such a Cruise fanboy that I don't really give a shit at the end of the day what his hair looks like. Like I love Tom Cruise, unironically love Tom Cruise. So, you know, he could do just about anything. And Rock of Ages wasn't too good.
I think he was good in it, though.
Yeah.
He looks great. Well, yeah, but man, watching that makes your skin crawl off your body.
There's like an extended cut too that's like 15 minutes longer. So
no, thank you.
Well, this is the most important question, obviously, is can you rank the movies from your least favorite to favorite? Whoever wants to go first. I mean, I think we know where 2 is going to fall on both lists.
Yeah, 2 is number 1, right? As least favorite?
Least favorite, yeah.
In that order? I might be a little bit different than a lot of people, because I ride pretty hard for Mission Impossible 3, which isn't very popular these days.
There are some who do love 3. You're not alone. You're not alone.
And I will say I love it almost exclusively for Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I think that he is one of the series' top bad guys. In terms of threat, like that guy, he's like the Lex Luthor of the series, right? He's the guy that you believe can outsmart and just is so mean that he can outwill Ethan Hunt. You definitely couldn't beat him in a fight, which is why that fight lasts for 20 seconds when it actually comes down to it. But I love that about that. So that'd be pretty high. I think that I haven't rewatched the Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation in a while. So it gets a little muddy, and so take this into consideration that those could maybe flip around. But I would go in terms of favorites. Least favorite, Mission Impossible 2. Then probably. Well, it's hard because it makes it sound like, because I don't like 2, but I really like all the other ones, right?
Right.
So I don't know, what would I put in this? Scott, you might need to bail me out here while I'm thinking.
Well, I'm making my own list.
All right, so Mission Impossible 2, least favorite. I'm getting caught up on Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol. I honestly think that Ghost Protocol might be my next. I love it, but I'm a big fan of the Rebecca Ferguson years. Like, I love how it ties back in to 3 with Michelle Monaghan coming back, in Fallout. So yeah, I'm gonna have to Ghost Protocol it, even though it has some of the better the better set pieces. But just in terms of story, I think I like Rogue Nation a little bit better.
Okay.
So I guess it goes 2, Ghost Protocol 3.
But you're putting Ghost Protocol second from bottom?
I know, Scott. It's insane.
No, sorry. It'll be 2, 1, Ghost Protocol.
Interesting.
Scandalous.
3, Rogue Nation, and or do I put Fallout above Rogue Nation? I don't know. This is the hardest question I've been asked since quarantine.
That's how good this franchise is.
Yeah, I mean,
some of them it's like varying shades of greatness. That's the thing,
And I can guarantee you, if I thought to rewatch Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation before jumping into this, and I rewatched 3 recently. So I don't know. I think that's kind of my list. I think you go 2, 1, Ghost Protocol and or Rogue. It has to be Ghost Protocol because I like Rebecca Ferguson stuff too much.
This is blowing my mind.
Wait, so what's number 1? What's your number 1? Is it Fallout or
it's 3?
Fallout your number 1?
No, 3 isn't number 1. 3 will
okay.
probably be 2, 1, Ghost Protocol 3.
This is the longest it's taken anyone to ever come up with their list.
I'm so sorry.
Just write it down.
Rogue. Yeah, Fallout's probably my favorite. If I had to be forced to pick one, I just like how mean it gets. Yeah, let's put Fallout at the top because I love what Henry Cavill brings to it. I love the fake out with Benji. I think that whole sequence is great. I love that they kill Alec Baldwin.
Right.
And I love the final helicopter chase and the fight on the mountainside and circling back to Michelle Monaghan and kind of embracing what the Bond series doesn't, in that these previous loves have actually had an impact on him, and and that he still cares for people, and so I don't know. I think that I do have to make that, and I know it's going to be bonkers. I got yelled at for my. I had a ranking article on Collider where they asked me to rank all the Bond movies, and I still get shit to this day. That was 3 years ago.
What was it? What was your top 3?
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
I'm gonna look up this article.
From Russia with Love is my favorite.
Great.
But I got yelled at because The Spy Who Loved Me was ranked fairly low. I just don't like the Roger Moore era. I think Live and Let Die is the best Roger Moore Bond movie because it's the most fun one. On Her Majesty's Secret Service was probably 2.
Great.
I don't remember what the third one was. It's probably no, it wasn't. Number 1 wasn't From Russia with Love. It was Goldfinger, because I think Goldfinger is the quintessential James Bond movie. That is everything you want in a James Bond movie is in Goldfinger.
Yeah, you had From Russia with Love 4th.
From Russia with Love is very high on my list.
Yeah, you got Goldfinger number 1.
Yeah.
Casino Royale number 2.
Okay.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service number 3, and From Russia with Love 4.
Right.
And then GoldenEye 5. I love this list. It's great.
Yeah, I got yelled at mostly because the people who grew up with the Roger Moore era Bonds hated that I didn't much care for the Roger Moore era Bonds.
I love Spy Who Loved Me. I'd put that up pretty high, and I also would put Living Daylights way higher than you have it, but that's just me.
Living Daylights was one of the big surprises because I rewatched every single one of them before that list. And Living Daylight, the Dalton era stuff is actually really good. It's so different. It's actually the most Mission Impossible-y, Living Daylights could have been directed by Brian De Palma.
Right.
It's very seedy.
I love that. Yes, it is. It's
so. I'm sorry. I feel like I've been talking for 10 minutes straight and haven't given you guys.
Well,
real answers.
you've given Scott time to formulate his list. So
okay, good.
Baby, I'm ready.
Okay, let's hear it.
Bottom of the barrel, 2. You're out.
All right.
This may change after I revisit 2 in the near future, but for now, John Woo, sorry, you're in the caboose. Next one up is 3. And the reason I'm putting it there is I feel 3, despite having one of the better villains in the entire franchise, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I also like the MacGuffin in that one with the rabbit's foot a lot. It feels small. It feels like what it is. Like they gave J.J. Abrams enough budget to make a Mission Impossible movie, but perhaps not the same amount of budget or Mission Impossible movie he would make today. It feels like he's coming off Lost and Alias.
Yeah. A lot of close-ups in that one.
Right.
A lot of close-ups.
Yeah, it just feels small.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to I think there's way more to like in that movie than there is to dislike. Again, the only one of these movies that I dislike is 2. Everything else is, we're in shades.
There's also a lot of good character work in there. Like the scene where Tom Cruise is like pretending to be whatever, the like traffic controller or whatever, the traffic organizer, and he's boring the shit, talking out of his party guest, talking about his job. Yeah. Like, to me, is one of my favorite scenes in any of the Mission Impossible stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so next one up is the original Mission Impossible.
Okay.
I'm kind of, this was sort of a battle between this one and the next one up, but at this point, the franchise hasn't grown into what it is. Ethan is not the character that we know and love. It doesn't resonate in the same way for me emotionally as some of the latter ones. So next one up is Rogue Nation. I like Rogue Nation. I'm not fanatical about it, but it's got some good set pieces, and I love Rebecca Ferguson in it, but on the whole, it doesn't hang together for me as well as the top 2, which is number 2 is Mission Impossible Fallout, which has some of the best shit in the entire franchise. In Fallout, I feel like they've gotten pretty much as close as they can to perfecting this formula, and Chris McQuarrie is just a genius, Right. But my number 1 spot goes to Ghost Protocol, and I'll tell you why. It's that opening sequence. I think the opening prison break sequence, and actually when they go into the Kremlin and that whole thing with the moving screen, who directed? Brad Bird?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He injects that movie with a sense of fun that I don't necessarily feel from Rogue Nation or Fallout. Those are serious spy movies with like considerable set pieces in them. But Ghost Protocol has kind of a bubblegum poppiness to it that I don't think that those two have. And so it's like my platonic ideal of a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah. It's so much fun. And that, that prison break sequence was very different. Initially, Benji had a prosthetic tongue that he took out of his mouth, and it turned into like a plastic explosive. And he put it on the plastic partition in between him and Cruise, and that's how they broke out. So they completely reconceptualized that whole sequence. And
that's
for
great.
the better. Yeah. But yeah, I love that. I love both of your lists. Do you guys want to tell us where we can find you online and plug your amazing podcast?
Eric?
Oh my God, you're making me do it. Okay.
I've been talking for like 40 minutes.
Yeah, but you had a very succinct and clear list, and I spent 15 minutes waffling.
You spent an hour like staring into space and just sort of naming movies because you should have written it down, baby. If you had written it down, you would know.
That's right. I just had to quickly scan IMDb and make sure I was hitting all the right titles. All right, so the Kingcast, you can find us on Twitter at Kingcast19. That's where we'll dump a bunch of stuff about the show, who our guests are. We'll drop some random funny Stephen King memes and things like that.
Threaten to egg Dean Koontz's house.
Yep.
Yeah, this Dean Koontz rivalry is really getting heated.
People get mad every fucking time. Like every time. It's like it's a running gag now with the show, but like once every month or two, we'll, have a little jab at Dean Koontz, and someone will come out of the woodwork and be like, I do not think that you should be pitting authors against each other. And it's like, lighten the fuck up, Francis,
And then there'll be the other side where somebody's like, oh, I legit live like a block away from Dean Koontz's house. Do you want me to toilet paper it?
I saw
For real?
that.
And we're just like, nope, please, let's keep this I think, what'd you say? Keep it a Twitter bit?
We're not trying to organize Dean Koontz Project Mayhem so I can get this guy's house burned to the ground. Like, he's just kind of a dork. It's easy to pick on Dean Koontz, so of course we're going to pick on Koontz.
Right.
So, follow us there on Twitter. My Twitter's at Eric Vespy, which is my name, so that's appropriate. And if you want to listen to the Kingcast, it's available on all audio platforms. The show, we focus on one title every episode, mostly stuff that's been adapted, and talk about the original text and the adaptation. And we always do it with a special guest. And the special guests tend to be people, creatives within the entertainment industry. So it'll be writers, directors, actors.
Well, thank you guys so much for accepting this mission. It's been a real blast to get to talk to you. And we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you for having us on.
And we're back. So, Charles, we survived the Kingcast crossover episode.
It was scary. It was touch and go, but we did it.
Does that make you want to read more Stephen King or no?
It does. Yeah, I wish I was a better reader. I have so much to read. I have a pile next to my bed of things that I need to read, and so I need to do that. I have transitioned a little bit more into iBooks and doing stuff on my phone, reading, and iPad, but just always my reading list is I do not get through enough of it. So yes, I need to read some Stephen King. I probably should get like a top 5 from you and figure out, what that is and then go from there. And
I've pitched a Light the Fuse Patreon, aka Light the Fuse Plus book club, which I think maybe we should start next year. And that would get you cool. into reading as well.
That would force me to,
books. Yeah.
Yes, and speaking of Light the Fuse Plus, you should sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/lightthefuse. And you get bonus content if you sign up at that bonus content level. And there are all kinds of other perks as well. You should also buy a shirt or a pin or a magnet or a sticker or a laptop bag or a mug or whatever from our TeePublic store, which is linked from our website, lightthefusepodcast.com. And we always talk about our Patreon, but we'll stop talking about the Patreon if you all sign up. So just everybody sign up, and then we'll shut up.
Yeah, and if you could like, subscribe, rate, or review wherever you listen to this podcast, that would be hugely helpful. And just tell people about it, tweet at us at LightTheFusePod, and we'll be back next week. What do you want? Do you want to tease anything, Charles?
Yeah, well, next week we've got Matthew Pearl coming on, who is a best-selling author. He found this the original script pages of the Untouchables train sequence that was, because of budget cuts, they had to do the train station sequence with the steps. But originally it was an action sequence planned for the train, which was then carried over into the climax of Mission Impossible. Matthew found us these pages. We talk about them. We talk about all kinds of other stuff. He is a wonderful guest. He's so awesome, and he is trying to steal Drew's spot, and I'm fine with it.
Wow. Real loyal, Charles. Jeez. No, I'm fine with it too. He's so nice. He's such a great guy. We'll have him on again, you should sign up to Light the Fuse Plus. We've got a great Patreon episode with him on there, and he's just a wonderful person and a very talented guy. And so that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I want to just give a special thank you to Jacob Ballard. Jacob's been with us for so long. He's such an awesome member of our Patreon crew, and we just couldn't do it without him, all of his support. Also, I want to credit our intern, Abby Smith, who's done some great work for us on social media and our website. And also, this episode was mixed and edited by Luke Burson. Thank you to Luke. And also, of course, our music, original and otherwise, is by Kevin Blumenfeld. So we'll see you next week. Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.